we're talking about clarity of speech. And how do we get clarity? Most of the time when we think of clarity as professionals, we think that individual needs to hear
high frequencies, consonant
sounds. So consonant sounds are usually sounds that are, of course, not vowels. They're consonants. So, and the most common consonants that are difficult to hear are sounds that are considered fricative sounds or sounds with friction. So the F, the S, the C, the CH, the TH, the SH. Now, when I'm saying this, you speak the English language wonderfully, by the way.
Thank you. I've done it my whole life.
It's a Latin language. And what do these Latin-based languages all have in common? The words start, and sometimes the middle, but certainly they start and end with consonant sounds. Yeah. And so to hear clarity, you better be hearing some consonants.
You want to hear those consonants. You want to be able to hear those clarity tones. And if you're missing them,
right,
then what it results in is you're hearing part of the word, but you're missing a piece of it. Or as you string those words into sentences, you're missing just little bits and pieces of it along the way.
That's right.
So you mentioned some of these consonants that are high frequency. The reason we mention that is most hearing losses are high frequency hearing losses. Any sounds of speech that are unvoiced, so if you don't have your voice box vibrating, you know, a t or a s, or these sounds you mentioned, these friction sounds, fricative sounds, anything that's unvoiced is going to be high frequency.
Yeah.
And when you're missing those sounds, boy, you hear instead of loft, you miss the F.
I've got a funny story.
Lot, yeah.
That goes along with what Dr. Whitaker's saying. My buddy, his name's Scott. And so we're in school, we're back at the University of Louisville, we're doing some lab tests, and I'm thinking, I'm going to test some of my dental student buddies that are in the dental school. And so I test Scott, and I notice he's got a high frequency loss. And so I'm looking at it going, whoa, he has more hearing loss than I thought any one of these dental students would have. So I looked at him and said, you're not hearing the high frequencies very well. And I said, like, your name is Scott, but the S isn't real sharp for you. You may notice at times, depending on who's speaking. And he's like, well, I've always known my name is Cott. And he was joking. He left off the letter S on purpose, but he said, from now on, call me Cott. And I was like, oh, don't, you know, you're taking this too far. But in honesty, that's kind of what happens is you start to hear the high frequency sound, the S, less and less and less, the more hearing loss you have, to the point where you don't even know your own name anymore. Instead of Scott, with the S, Scott, it's Cott.
Our brains do a pretty remarkable job of filling in those gaps. And so when someone's speaking to you and you have a high frequency hearing loss, you might be missing S and F and TH throughout that sentence. The brain does a pretty good job of kind of filling it in.
As long as you have
trying to comprehend
content, familiar, if you're familiar.
But the problem is it doesn't fill it in perfectly. And so you're hearing it, but sometimes you're missing it and you're misunderstanding. You might even be confident that you heard it correctly, but you missed it. Your brain filled in the gaps incorrectly.
Our speech language pathologist friends, who we love, they help us understand what these phonemes mean and the significance of the phonemes. And they say when people are losing the high frequencies, there are substitution errors, which means you thought it was an S, but it really needed to be a CH sound or something, and so you just substitute the two because you're guessing.
The brain swaps it, yeah.
You're trying to fill in, and you just filled in with the wrong sound, and now instead of saying thirsty, they were just talking about Thursday.
Yeah.
And they're two similar words, thirsty and Thursday, but if you just substitute that, you can get on the day of the week instead of just the fact that I'm thirsty.
Right, so that's when you fall into that trap, right?
Substitution, and the other one, like my friend Scott, is called a phoneme deletion, which means you just don't even hear the sound, so you really think your name is Cott instead of Scott, or you might think they're talking about camping and let's grab the cot, and really what they said is we want to invite Scott, let's grab Scott.
Yeah.
So can you see, I mean.
It gets embarrassing. People laugh about it all the time. Husbands and wives come in, they say, yeah, we laugh all the time because we misunderstand each other.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening is you're just missing bits and pieces of the phrases. Your brain's trying to fill in the gaps. The brain sometimes gets it wrong, and then you have those funny things. And it can be funny, but it can also be serious. And I think sometimes we laugh at our weaknesses, and it's it can be funny. You've got to have a sense of humor with life.
But what if that happened over and over and over to you, to the point where you're like, I'm just the guy that people laugh at,
Yeah.
and I'm not contributing in a meaningful way. That's kind of a hard thing.
Yeah, that's what happens. You know, in public, you laugh about it. You laugh about it with your spouse, but then in private, it hurts a little bit.
In research, they talk about this word isolation, and it basically means I used to go out to dinner with my friends, or I used to go to do this or that activity, but because I'm not successful and because it's not meaningful for me anymore, I'm just going to choose not to go. It's kind of emotional. Like, it makes me emotional just thinking about someone who, a dad or a mom or a friend, a cousin or whatever, someone you love is such a significant contributor. They always went, and they always made that event better because of their presence. And now they're not coming.
Yeah, they don't want to. They're embarrassed.
Because of hearing loss.
Mm-hmm. That happens a lot.
It's a big deal.
That happens a lot. Yeah, and it is sad.
That word isolation just makes you sad. And when you look at the relationship between people that are now isolating more, so they're not getting that dynamic influence and that dynamic taxation in the brain of, I need to make decisions on the fly and I need to be a contributor. Now you can see why people who are involved with isolation experience dementia at a higher rate and at a lower age. And so those are things that we look at. I mean, this idea of hearing clarity doesn't just speak to, I want to be more successful with my family and my friends. It speaks to mental health. It speaks to emotional health and knowing you're great. You're a valuable partner of this team, mom, or of this family, dad, or whatever. So it's very emotional.
I did not know that our conversation about vowels and consonants was going to turn out sad.
I know.
A discussion of depression and mental
I
health.
might need a hug.
But
I might need a hug.
you do.
You know what? Bring it in.
Here's the bottom line, though. You don't need to be sad. You don't need to be lonely. So many people think that this hearing loss is just something they're going to have to deal with. It's fixable.
Yeah.
It's a treatable condition.
Yep.
You know, there's no sense in having these consonants depress you.
That's right.
Let's bring them back.
And the ability to fix this doesn't involve a surgery. Doesn't involve a major medical procedure. No anesthesia or medications that might mess with other things that are going on chemically in your body. So it's super non-invasive.
Relatively
non-threatening.
easy. Yeah.
Easy.
Hey, yeah, if it's done right, it's great. It's wonderful. And yeah, consonants, they make us happy.